I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring guests that teach all of us about some segment of the law, how it's made, broken, enforced, and how it could be made better. There are two things that I think keep this country great. The right to a jury trial if there's $7 or more at stake. The right to a jury trial if you're accused of a crime. And easy access to the ballot box if you are old enough to vote and otherwise not disqualified. So the right to vote and the right to have your case heard by 12 people who are total strangers, have never met anybody among that group previously, therefore impossible to corrupt. Those, in my opinion, are the two bastions of our freedom and should be fought for. I love elections. I think everyone who's eligible should thoughtfully vote. This is the time of the year that makes me buy extra newspapers in addition to the dozen I get already. It's election time. And the candidates who have the courage to say, I'm running for election and I want your vote, have my admiration. We have one of them coming here today. Even bigger, steeper hill, he wants to be a judge. More on that later. Let's welcome Michael Rust to our show.
George.
I am so pleased. I wrote a letter to the three people who say that they want to replace Judge Teresa Basileir, who is retiring after a great career. You were the first one that answered. You're the first one here to tell the voters why you're a candidate and why they ought to vote for you. Nothing wrong with being first.
Nope. No, there's not.
Has that been your style your whole life?
It is definitely something that I try to be. It's something that obviously I want to be on April 2nd in the ballot counting as well.
Well, we're going to get to the point of why in a little bit, but let's begin with you telling our audience just a bit about your background, because not everybody can run for judge. There's some qualifications.
Absolutely. So one of the only requirements to run for judge is you have to obviously live in Winnebago County, but then you also have to be a member of the state bar. So that means that you have to have gone to law school. And I went to law school at Marquette University Law School, and I absolutely loved my time there.
And how many years ago was that you became a lawyer after graduating from Marquette? You probably had to take the bar then.
I did not. It was 17 years ago. So I've been practicing law in different forms for the last 17 years.
Well, tell us about some of those forms.
Yeah. So immediately upon graduating from law school, I worked for Marquette for a year. And then I transitioned up to Northeast Wisconsin and became a litigation attorney up in Green Bay. And I did that for a little over a year and a half. I tried cases all over the state, and including in the federal courts, and even took a case all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court on appeal. And so we, after that litigation time, then I transitioned my practice into conflict resolution. This was one of my big focuses while I was in law school, was on mediation and conflict resolution. And so I've focused my career primarily on resolving other people's conflicts.
Well, it's interesting that you put your finger on probably the biggest development in the legal system of the last 20 years.
Yes.
When I got out of law school, we just tried the case. We didn't have depositions. We didn't have motions. We weren't even required to tell the opposing side who our witnesses were going to be. We tried the case to a jury. We trusted the jury. We went out and had lunch with the judge. Sometimes it was solid, sometimes liquid. And the clerk would call us and say, the jury has reached a verdict. We'd come back, get the jury verdict. Whoever won had to pay for lunch. And then we would chat about the things that the other side had done wrong, and had a real good camaraderie of the bar. Those were our, even though we fought them every week, they were our best friends. Really, they were very ethical, talented people. But that has changed. Discovery, mediation, arbitration, focus groups. Tell us about those changes. You've been in the middle of it.
Yes. And, I think that one of the concerns that you hit on right away was the unknown of what a jury's going to come back with. Are they going to come back on one side? Are they going to come back on the other? And how much are they going to decide this case is worth? And that big unknown is something that has really driven a lot of people to try to resolve their cases themselves. And that's where mediation or the other forms of dispute resolution can come in, to try to find a way to help people resolve conflicts on their own.
Well, actually, as usual, the legislature has meddled in our system, and they've actually passed a law requiring alternate dispute resolution in some cases. Can you describe that?
Yeah, so you're referring to Wisconsin Statute 802.12, which lists out a bunch of different types of alternative dispute resolution that are available to the courts to have people try prior to going to trial. And it does give people more of a say in the outcome of the case. You might not like paying the contractor who didn't necessarily do the job the way you wanted it done, or you may not like resolving the case in a way that you don't think that it should go, but you know that it's done, you know that it's resolved. And so I focused my career on that, and then now I've transitioned into helping people still resolve conflicts, just in a different way.
Well, we're almost ready for our first break. This time goes in a hurry. Well, one of the things I've noticed in the last 60 years of litigation is it's gotten awfully expensive. And the avenue that you've focused your career on, alternate dispute resolution, can save people money. And law and life are not fair. If you don't have money, you don't have many arrows in your quiver. And this has been a real step forward, and that's the first thing I'm going to ask you about after our first break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis. Attorney Michael Rust is my guest, and he's one of the three candidates for Judge, Branch 1. That's coming up shortly. We've got a primary because there are three candidates. We have to reduce that to two. When is the primary?
The primary is February 20th.
That's coming up real quickly, isn't it?
Very quickly.
And then the final election of the two survivors, when is that?
April 2nd.
All right. Now, this is supposedly nonpartisan.
Correct.
And it should be nonpartisan. It should have nothing to do with political parties, but of course, lots of things should be, and sometimes politics enter. But it really isn't about politics at all. It's interesting. I have watched in the last 60 plus years the practice of law becoming more and more specialized.
Yes.
Now we elect somebody to be a judge that's supposed to be an expert on family law, on criminal law, on civil law, on political law, personal injury, and everything like that. If I had to pick one word to pick the job, I'd say it's impossible. What are your views?
I don't think that the job is impossible, but I think that the job does require somebody who has the track record of dealing in lots of areas of law, but then also, most importantly, has the track record of being neutral. Coming in, as you said, this should be a nonpartisan race. Unfortunately, it's not always a nonpartisan race. Often politics start bleeding into the judiciary. And the importance of a free and neutral, non-biased judge is essential to our democracy. And I'm the only candidate with over 12 years of experience being a professional neutral. And I think that's vitally important as we come to elect our judges.
Well, you happen to be at the right place at the right time. Litigation, which is how I've spent my career, has become so expensive that, yes, the Constitution says you have a right to a trial. But of course, if you don't have an expert witness on liability, you're going to lose. If you don't have an expert witness on damages, you're going to lose. And if you don't have a lawyer, and they charge like the Israeli army, I've heard, you're going to lose. And so litigation has almost priced itself out of reach for the average citizen who may have a very just cause. What's the option today for that citizen?
Yeah, when it comes to the civil litigation process, so anything that's not criminal, and all of the other types of law kind of fall into that civil law bucket. When it comes to trying a civil case, the option of trying to resolve it yourself through mediation or arbitration, where you hire a private judge, essentially, in order to resolve your cases, can be vastly more cost effective, as well as it takes less time, because you don't have to deal with trying to juggle around the judge's calendar and all of the criminal actions.
And tell us about your experience in that area, because you've been a recognized leader.
Yes. And so I ran the Winnebago Conflict Resolution Center, as well as the Fond du Lac Conflict Resolution Center. I took over the Fond du Lac Conflict Resolution Center more recently, but I've ran the Winnebago Conflict Resolution Center for 9.5 years before I became a court commissioner. And so in that process, I mediated over 2,000 cases, resolving civil cases of every case type, whether it be guardianship, contractor disputes, family court cases like divorce or paternity, child support, those types of cases, even cases that you wouldn't think would go to trial. You had mentioned $7. Well, I didn't quite get down to $7, but I did mediate a $17 case at one point. So all sorts of cases at different levels, from $17 up to multi-million-dollar cases, resolving those for the court system and, more importantly, for the public.
Well, I think that there are some goals that are encompassed within the tent of winning. And one of those goals is to be heard.
Yes.
Not everyone has had the same educational opportunity, the same economic opportunity, and they just don't feel that they've been listened to. Mm-hmm. And alternate dispute resolution is a wonderful opportunity for Floyd to tell his story.
Absolutely.
And that accomplishes another goal of minimizing violence.
Yes.
Because you don't want Floyd telling his story with a gun and a pint of cheap whiskey. You want it done in a supervised, thoughtful, careful, caring, professional setting with a professional who can recognize real danger.
Absolutely.
Because if these things aren't nipped early, they end up sometimes in homicides.
They can, and that's always a concern anytime you're dealing with conflicts. I've done a lot of trainings on conflict and the different types of conflict, and unfortunately, violence is a form of conflict resolution. It's not one that obviously we allow under law, but I mean, I also, as we mentioned before we went on air, I have 3 kids, and sometimes it might feel like that's the only form of conflict resolution that they know. But, you know, coming back from violence, there are different forms of conflict resolution, and it really depends on how much control you want over the outcome versus just allowing somebody else to decide it for you. And so with my professional practice, I started helping people resolve their own conflicts, and, you know, helping people have that say and have that ability to be heard. And I've transitioned now into being a court commissioner, but I've still brought those skills with me. And so having the ability to show someone that I've heard them, show someone that what they have said has mattered, even if I don't agree, or even if what they're telling me doesn't necessarily directly apply to the law, is important. And so because of those skill sets that I bring to the bench, I've actually had cases where I've ruled against someone and they have said thank you, because they know that they were heard, they had their day in court, they got to say everything that they wanted to say, and they knew that I took what they said. They know that I actually listened to what they said. I didn't prejudge the case. I was neutral, I determined the facts, and then I applied the law.
And not only that, they didn't have to sell the house to hire a lawyer and 5 experts.
Correct.
On an issue which to them was more about principle.
Correct.
Than saving the farm.
Yes.
And that's what the law is, problem solving. Problem solving without corruption and without violence. And I got a problem right now. We're out of time for this second segment. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis. My guest today is attorney Michael Rust. He is one of 3 candidates to be Circuit Court Branch 1 judge when Teresa Basilier retires shortly. We have a preliminary elimination of one of the 3 candidates in February. Then in early April, we have the final decision. Attorney Rust's specialty and the mark that he has gained a lot of respect in the legal community with is a different approach than taking every case to a jury. It involves alternate dispute resolution, and in a time when that is in the vogue, that has been the approach the legislature has taken and the courts are taking. He seems to be at the right place at the right time. Tell us why, tell us as Winnebago County voters, why you're the man for the hour.
So, yeah, I agree completely that the legislature has come forward and said that alternative dispute resolution is a benefit. And I've focused my career on that, and it's been wonderful for 9.5 years, and then some additional time before that outside of Winnebago County. I then transitioned my practice. I became court commissioner. I've served as a court commissioner now for the last 1.5 years. And so I'm still resolving other people's conflicts, just in a slightly different way. And taking that history and experience of being a neutral who has heard other people's conflicts, and I've come to help them resolve things, has been a really powerful part of my practice of law and my experience that I will bring with me to the bench. And being neutral, though, that doesn't mean that I don't care. Sometimes people hear that neutrality and they think, oh, he's just being, aloof or doesn't want to actually engage. That's not the case at all. And I've demonstrated that through my leadership in the community. And so I was the board chair for the Oshkosh Area United Way. I was the president of the Rotary Club of Oshkosh. I founded TEDx Oshkosh. I'm on the core team of the Oshkosh Civility Project. And so, I've actively been out there in the community making Winnebago County a better place to live and work. And I deeply care about this community that I've chosen to have be my home. And so I want this place to be a good place to live and work, and transitioning my practice from directly alternative dispute resolution to being a court official, and now still resolving people's conflicts just in another way as I run for Winnebago County Circuit Court Branch 1.
I happen to, in thinking about this show that we're doing early in the morning, so people will have ample opportunity to review it as many times as they want to, what I look for in a judge. And I wrote down some of these terms, and I want your response. Strength. I want a judge that lets everybody in the room know he's the judge or she's the judge. After judges have been judges a while, they lose the next one, which is patience. They think they've heard it all before. Then there's kindness. Most of the people who come to court really are lost. They're frustrated, they're angry, they feel they're being mistreated. And a little kindness doesn't mean there's no strength.
Right.
Then humility. It's surprising how the head keeps growing with all of us, including me. And resolution. Let's get this finished. Now, nobody can be all of those things, but I want your comments. I'd love it if you shot me down or added a couple.
I think that strength, while you listed it first, I don't know that it's necessarily the most important quality. I think that it is important. I think that it is essential, but I don't know that it's necessarily the most important out of those that you listed, because there are different ways to show strength. And showing strength by beating your fist against the table isn't the kind of strength that is actually effective in the courtroom. Or by showing strength by yelling at people, that also is not strength that works in the courtroom. When it comes to kindness, I think that is emblematic of my experience in listening to people, showing them that I've listened, even if I disagree with them. And I think that helps people to realize that the court system is, while it can be scary, it doesn't have to be bad. The courthouse is kind of a bad place. People come there on their worst day of their life. Most of the time, people walk into my office, as I call it, people walk into the courthouse, and it's probably one of the worst days of their life. And having someone who is in charge of the room and showing that strength, but still showing the kindness at the same time, allows people to feel more comfortable, which allows them to feel like justice has actually been done. I think you're absolutely right that humility is important, and not becoming overly self-conscious or self-absorbed is important. And my experience with hearing people talk and tell me their stories for more than 12 years, I've demonstrated my ability to maintain that neutral and composed approach throughout my listening to others. And then, as you said, resolution, getting the thing done. And I think that is very important for everyone. Nobody wants to keep coming back to court just because the judge isn't prepared, or just because the judge doesn't want to make a decision yet. People want a judge who's going to make the decision that's based off of the law, based off of the facts, and not based off of bias.
Well said. We have a system that irons things out if people are ironing. And judges are supposed to be ironers. I congratulate you on being a candidate, laying your cards out. I think the job you're seeking is thankless half the time, but so important all of the time. I wish you well, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank attorney Michael Rust, not only for being on the show, but more importantly for what he's doing professionally and for his willingness to be a candidate based on neutrality. This is something new to me. For 60-some years, I have been an advocate. I know which side I'm on, and I fight. Right or wrong, my client is entitled to the best lawful, ethical fight I can give him or her. But Michael Rust has a different approach. He's a neutral, a professional neutral. His job is not to pick a side, it's to pick an avenue of resolving the controversy so the people can get along and go ahead with the rest of their lives. That's an idea worth thinking about. You think about it, and I promise I will too. I'm George Curtis, and thanks for watching the show.